Four really interesting speeches here, really painting the very high level landscape that we've got ahead of us that we could look at, diving down into identifying, where some of the blockers might be, largely in people and behaviours. There's no surprise there, but at the same time, people and behaviours are the drivers behind it as well. So you've got a virtuous circle based around people. Really interesting presentation there from Mark about the need for these common rules. So when you've got such a wide-ranging landscape or architecture ahead of us, that you've got to have some common rules. But are they top-down or bottom-up? Which I think is a really interesting area for questions. Samuel leading the DT hub. Got some real pioneers out there, sort of working hard on digitizing their estate already. I think resilience is going to be a key point for everybody here. And then great from Sam to see that actually there's a lot of progress being made already. Some really good examples of modular construction and factory robotics. And great to see that there's some money available for pilot projects. So there's plenty of opportunity for questions there. We are running a little bit over time at the moment, so we'll probably push the tea break back just a few minutes. But we've had quite a lot of questions come in through Slido. And perhaps a first question, perhaps I was going to point towards Mark, actually. The first one that's come in. How will digital twins align with other initiatives such as smart cities?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question, as I'd expect from Kevin. So I think what we're seeing already are that there is a number of cities developing digital twins. So just as part of their own drive for kind of making themselves smart, a number of them are developing digital twins, not least of which is London, that at last count had 8 digital twins, but Molly is going to update us later on, there may be more. And so I can see that digital twins can end up being a really key tool to enable cities to go smart. And I think that potentially, with the hype that went around smart cities a number of years ago, everyone said, yes, it's a great idea to go smart, but then there's a question of, okay, so how do we do that? And I think one of the answers to the how is enabling digital twins of different sectors to communicate with each other. Because quintessentially in a city is where all these different sectors come together. And if we have a competent digital twin, let's just say, for a transport system, but also for the energy system, also for the telecom system, then it has to make sense in the context of the city to enable those digital twins to communicate with each other for the benefit of the city. And so I see that there is potentially a really strong support for the kind of smart city initiative. It's not a kind of a cross-cutting one. They're pointing in the same direction. This is very much aligned. And something that I said earlier on is that what we're really trying to do as part of CDBB is facilitate alignment across the industry. We're not trying to step in and say, no, you're doing it wrong, you've got to do it this way. It's much more a case of saying, this is a great thing that we're working on. Doesn't it help if we go in this direction? Because then that will benefit everyone. So hopefully, Kevin, that answers the question. It's very much aligned, and I would see the work that we're trying to do on digital twins as being a key enabler of it.
Thanks very much, Mark. We've got some really good questions coming in. There's a question from Mac Mizumwe. When will the CDBB Digital Twin Information Hub be up and running, and will it be free access or subscription? I wonder if that's one for Samuel, is it?
Yeah, so principally the hub is up and running now. I believe you've got postcards in your tote bags, which have got some information about how to kind of register your interest. At the moment, it's kind of you register interest, and then we're kind of managing the membership. As the actual web-enabled component of it goes live towards the end of this year, then we'll be able to increase that membership much more. We are being very careful to make sure that the hub itself is delivering value. So we're not making it open to everyone because we want to keep it focused on delivering value, but we will be able to increase that as we understand more effectively the best ways in which it can support. And as things stand, it's free to get involved, and we're encouraging as many people to kind of express their interest as possible.
Thanks. Just moving on, I think perhaps one for Sarah here. Really interesting question from Jenny Young relating to the 600 billion infrastructure pipeline, albeit coming from very different places. But do you feel that there might be a need to stipulate amongst the deliverers of that program how they will manage a digital twin program?
I think on that one, I mean, it always helps to set what the rules of the game are. I think to provide clarity for everyone. I think the idea at the beginning is to demonstrate what the benefits are so people see the advantages of coming into this and joining in with what's going on now in terms of the standards development. And I think it's very much on a voluntary basis to start with. Maybe over time, you know, that will need to be developed. I did see a question pop up about whether the national digital twin included existing infrastructure and how we get more out of the existing infrastructure. It absolutely does. It's all about addressing what we already have and building that, pulling the information, the data that we have about existing infrastructure into the national digital twin so that we understand what condition it is, what needs to be done to maintain it, how long it will last, and in that context, what else we need to build to add to that existing infrastructure. So it's very much about everything that we've got and everything that we'll need in the future.
Can I add to that? Because I think if we look at the assets that we already have compared to those that we build each year, the ratio is something like we have 99.5% of the assets we need, and each year we add 0.5%. So at that rate, if we only did digital twins for the new stuff, it would take us 200 years at that kind of replacement rate to build a digital twin for the whole lot. And we don't have 200 years. We think we're accelerating it to say this might be a 30-year program. So it's got to go faster than that. And so Sarah's absolutely right. This must look at existing infrastructure as well, but it's got to do it in a sensible way. There's no point in making really complex digital twins of things that don't matter. We've got to do it in a rational, ordered way and be driven by purpose and by the value that will come out of it. So it really is essential that we do look at the existing as well, yes.
Thanks. Now, I don't want to disenfranchise anybody who's not plugged into to Slido. So is there anybody in the audience with a burning question they want to add into the mix? We've certainly got one at the back there, so I'll take this one, and then we'll perhaps go back to Slido if we've got any time.
Okay. So I work in a internal design office for a large contractor, and my purpose here today is to identify what we need to do to upskill our digital engineering capabilities. So at the moment we're complying with many clients' BIM requirements, and I was just wondering that there's other consultants out there and there's other internal design departments within major contractors. Where does the information that's already been produced, where does that sit? Or is that down to the client to release that information? Is that information going to be used to help produce the digital twin?
That's a good question. Anybody on the table going to put their hand up to pick that one up?
I mean, I can have a go to kick it off. So again, a really important question. And I think that when it comes to the upskilling, this ends up being one of the really key enablers of the National Digital Twin. And we see that we've got a lot of the skills we need, but they're not evenly distributed. And so upskilling really is key. Just to kind of emphasize this point, we don't see the technical barriers being the main barriers, because an awful lot of the stuff that I talked about is totally doable now. The barriers that we've got is just getting the industry in a shape to accept these things. So there's cultural barriers, but also skills barriers. So you've put your finger on a really important point here, and I think that as an industry we need to work on it. Thankfully, we are. And so the CLC has got a really big push just now around skills, CITB being heavily involved in that. But at the moment, we don't know precisely what it is that we need to upskill people on. And this is a journey, so the learning that we talked about that will be happening in the DT Hub will throw up all sorts of areas where we need to upskill. So we can't kind of sit here today and say, these are all the answers, and that's what you've got to do, because we don't know that yet. But as we go on the journey, we will know, and then we can put those things in place. I think there are quite a few things which can be done early on. The work that you're already doing on the kind of the foundation of BIM is incredibly important, because pretty much everything we've talked about builds on that foundation. So it sounds like you're doing the right things, and there is an element of wait and see. The other thing which I just say very briefly on this is that some clients are ahead of others on this, and there's no point in trying to sell into clients that aren't ready for it, something that they don't want. But there are some very big infrastructure clients that are leading in this area, and I would say that for the supply chain community that wants to move ahead, a really good thing is to work with those clients and help their aspirations to come to fruition.
And I think just to add to that, I guess, so any of the kind of material we're generating at the moment, we're making available through the CDBB website. And then as the hub comes to kind of fruition itself, we will have much more kind of focused materials and things that will go into greater detail about where we feel those areas for support are required will kind of be published within that. So we're already starting to put some materials out, but because it's such a kind of rapidly changing environment at the moment, our thinking is developing almost on a day-to-day basis. So it kind of, you've got to keep an awareness yourself as what's going on and kind of keep your eye on what's coming out of there.
Great, thanks very much. But there are some, there's a steady flow of really interesting questions coming up, but I'm afraid we're out of time. But I think it probably sets the scene for what is going to be a very, very interesting day. We have a little bit over time now. We do have a sort of 15-minute break for coffee and networking, and I'm sure the IC staff will usher you back in here just as soon as possible. But perhaps you can put your hands together for all the speakers this morning, and thank you very much.